I'm going to introduce the second roundtable, and maybe I can ask the panelists and Joe Kahn to step up to the. Here, excuse me. I was so caught up in thinking about what I was going to say. Welcome. When the conference co-chair started to think about specifically the program and the makeup of the roundtables, we thought one of the things that was particularly apropos of what was happening around the world with regard to current events had to do with societal change. And that was particularly important in China, and we wanted to bring a special focus on that to you all. But also, when you think about societal change is really, as many of you may know, is a catalyst for political and economic reform. Now, in your program, you see that's a question mark, and that's the nature of the debate. Societal change, a catalyst for political and economic reform. And we're quite honored and delighted that we have a very well-renowned set of panelists. It's going to be led by our moderator, Joe Kahn, who many of you know is with the New York Times, deputy foreign editor and a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. We're also joined on the panel by Keping, who is from Beijing, who is the author of Democracy is a Good Thing. Now, democracy is a good thing, and it's written in China, so it's a little bit of a different interpretation. Cheng, who many of you know is a very well-known scholar on China at the Brookings Institute and is author of China's Emerging Middle Class. Dazong Wang, who is the president of Beijing Automotive, one of the leading automotive companies in China, and Clarence, Kwan, who not only is one of our co-chairs, but also a senior partner and head of the U.S.-China Services Group for Deloitte. We were going to be joined by Jesse Wang, who many of you know is with the China Investment Corporation, better known as the China Sovereign Fund. He was delayed in Singapore, had some traveling and visa issues, and therefore told us at the very last minute that he could not join us, but extended us his very best wishes and his disappointment that he couldn't be here, but he left it in our good hands of this particular panelist to continue. So I'll turn it over to Joe. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and I do think we have a remarkable panel of experts, both for the diversity of experience and expertise that they bring about China and for some of the tie-ins to some of the topics that are in the news for all of us these days, both things that are happening in China and some things that, at least so far, are not happening in China. You know, we're in a period of really remarkable economic and social transformation inside China, and these days we're also watching a kind of historic transformation of politics in some other parts of the world, particularly in the Middle East, that have raised some interesting questions about China, but so far no dramatic signs of change. So with that brief introduction, I think I want to introduce our panelists one by one and talk a little bit about both the prospect that Chinese-style change is going to continue and what that might lead to, as well as whether some of the other events that are going around in the world are going to have an impact on China. And I can't think of anybody better placed to begin to discuss that topic than Keping, who is probably, in fact, certainly China's leading intellectual on the subject of democracy in the Chinese context. He's written extensively on that subject, including Democracy is a Good Thing, which is must reading for anybody who wants to traffic in the circles of Chinese politics. And maybe you could tell us a little bit, just to start off the conversation, how you feel about some of the changes taking place around the world and what impact you think, if any, they're having on the domestic situation inside of China.
Thank you. Before my participation into this important Committee of 100, I visited Germany, Belgium, and Washington, D.C., where I was invited to deliver numbers of lectures and it was interviewed by many mass media. The question asked me by people in the West mostly is about the possibility of Jasmine Revolution in China. I always answer that Beijing is not Cairo. Why? I think, basically speaking, there are two major reasons. One is that most of Chinese people satisfactorily with the increasing livelihood since the reform. So I think most of Chinese people do not want any revolution in China, whether Jasmine Revolution or Cultural Revolution. They just want a harmonious society. Even among Chinese intellectual circle, there's a little influential view that was recorded, farewell to revolution. We say in Chinese, 告别革命. The second, the CCP and its government has still very strong governing capacity and enough legitimacy so that the CCP and the Chinese government is able to maintain social stability in such a big social transition. Of course, China faces a lot of serious challenges. However, I think the top leaders of CCP and the Chinese government are very clear that what challenges we are facing and how to meet them. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. The next panelist is a special guest for a couple of reasons. Particularly for me, Cheng Li and I were both in Shanghai. He's a native of Shanghai. I was a reporter there for the Wall Street Journal back in the early to mid 1990s when Shanghai was not yet the international center of capital and innovation that it's become today. And we had some reporting trips together, and I had the privilege of watching with him and even in some cases competing with him a little bit in analysis of Chinese politics. I, as a reporter, Cheng Li now as probably the leading expert on elite politics in China at the Brookings Institution in Washington. So delighted to have you with us today as well. And maybe to get conversation started about the political situation there in Beijing, maybe you could give us a little bit of your kind of thumbnail expectations for what is an important Chinese political transition that's coming up, the 18th Party Congress in 2012 that will bring in a new generation of leaders. What kind of expectations do you have for significant either economic or political change coming out of that party Congress?
Thank you, Joe. You mentioned about the 18 parties Congress, because it involves, as you said, generational change or generation turnover at that Congress. This does not happen too often in CCP history. It has only occurred 3 times in CCP's 90 years history. And they also, compared with the previous party Congress, there are at least 4 factors will make this one particularly important. First, there will be a large-scale leadership turnover in top leadership, in the party, in the government, in the military. You look at the 3 most important bodies, the party, the 9 members of standing committee. Among these 9 members, 7 will retire. In the state council, premier, vice premier, and state councilor, altogether 10 of them, probably 7 or 8 of them, or even more, will either retire or move to other institutions. In the military, 10 members of the military members of CMC, Central Military Commission, 7 of them will retire. So 70% leadership turnover, probably the largest one in the CCP history. Secondly, Chinese politics has become increasingly transparent.